Sounds good.
Yeah, the quints are the only cash games I find remotely interesting, and those are, you're essentially playing tournaments because they're pretty damn difficult to cash sometimes. Oh wait, I hear me. Yep. So it was me that had muted. Yeah, half a sec. Let me just make sure this phone is muted. Yeah. All right, all good. What's happening, Awesemo NFL fans? Terry McBride and Nick Lepre here. We are unfortunately rudderless. We are without our captain, our fearless leader, our host of all hosts on this show. EMAC is under the weather this week and unfortunately will not be joining us, but we're going to strive to give you guys the same experience here, give you a hell of a good breakdown on the Showdown slate. It's a weird, interesting looking game. It's been a weird, interesting NFL Sunday. We were talking about it behind the scenes. Nick, give us kind of like, well, first off, how you doing, buddy? How'd your Sunday go?
It was going all right. I mean, the Dolphins didn't play today, so I wasn't as angry watching any of the games today. But as a whole, I mean, there was ups, there was downs. I mean, the day started off so well with Cam Newton, and then he got benched. And he comes back in. Then PJ Walker throws a touchdown. And I don't know. It was just so confusing. That was like one of the most confusing games I've ever watched. But overall, today was a pretty good day. You feeling good, Terry?
I'm feeling all right. I was feeling better in the first games and then the first half of the second games, and some of the better lineups kind of slipped away a little bit. So I don't know. We're coming up around even probably for the day. And this season, the way things have been going in the big tournaments and the main slates, that's kind of all I've been hoping for in a lot of these ones. And if you get that outlier one week, it pays for the rest of it. So that's what we're shooting for. But yeah, it's just been a weird day. I mean, a lot of blowouts in games that we thought would be kind of close and competitive, some playoff situations on the line that just, kind of fell flat. So that leaves me, when we come in, I was saying it before the show, that leaves me kind of thinking like, all right, maybe this is the game that continues that trend, goes completely opposite of what Vegas is thinking. And it's got a 42.5 game total and an 11 plus point spread. Maybe it goes high, maybe it goes over that, turns into a close competitive game. What are you seeing in terms of just like the football situation with this game, just from an overview perspective?
From an overview perspective, I think that this is going to be probably a more interesting game than a lot of people think about, because everyone's going to try to talk themselves into the Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears narrative. Now that could entirely happen because, Matt Nagy is a bit of a silly guy, not the greatest of head coaches. But at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a fun game. And I'm happy that Justin Fields is starting because, who wants to watch Andy Dalton play quarterback? If I'm being honest with you, I just can't. No primetime Andy Dalton again. I mean, I think it was in primetime week 1. That was enough for me.
Yeah, I don't think anybody needs to see that. Unfortunately, I just think Dalton's going to be one of those guys who lives forever, and we'll see him for another few years in backup roles. He'll pop up, kind of like Mike Glennon, who played for my Giants today and proved the point about how it would have been nice if they had gotten Justin Herbert instead of Daniel Jones a couple drafts ago. But unfortunately, they didn't have that opportunity. But yeah, a little bit of a disaster there when you get those aging and lack of talent kind of quarterbacks. But we'll move on. We can dive in. We'll go through some lineup builds like we always do on this show, you guys. We've got our sponsor, our great sponsor, PrizePicks, of course, bringing us to you today. We'll go through a little bit about PrizePicks, make some dedicated picks for them in the second half of the show, like always. For right now, we'll get into some lineup building. Hit the like and subscribe down there. Make sure you give us a little love. We've got free tools and content at the site every single day, but I think we're probably beyond the point, since we're at 7:15, 7:20 at night, that any of these are going to be useful to you. But if you're interested in seeing where we were on week 14 top stacks, the NBA main slate ownership, or NHL top stacks, they're probably still open. So you can at least check out what they look like. And there will be new free content up tomorrow. So check out our early shows tomorrow, find out what's free, and you get behind the paywall and check things out. If you want to get in behind the paywall officially and become a member, I'm just flying through a couple of these reads so we can just talk through lineups. If you want to become an official member at Awesemo, we have a $29.95 a week platinum plan that you guys can get on. And we're doing a promo that runs during a lot of our shows, 25% off your first week of a platinum plan. The platinum's the one that covers everything we do at Awesemo, you guys. So it's covering NFL, NBA, NHL. If there's an MMA fight, we're covering that. Golf's off right now, baseball's off right now, but those would be included. NASCAR, everything we do, esports, it's all in there. If you want Fantasy Cruncher, that's a little bit of an add-on. Fantasy Cruncher is always a paid add-on, but the Platinum plan's the one that gets you behind the scenes for everything, and it's only $29.95 a week. If you use the promo code NFL Showdown LBL, a little bit clunky there, marketing team, we could shorten that one. NFL Showdown LBL, all caps, all one word. gets you 25% off your first week of a platinum plan. Get in there, check that out, you guys. If you're only looking for NFL DFS, we've got packages. The Express starts at $3.95 a week. I think the standard NFL is $14.95 a week. We've got affordable packages, but the one that puts a bunch of sports together is really the best way to do it. All right, Nick, that's it. That's it for a couple reads for like a half hour. We got some business out of the way here. Where do you want to go first? We've got 3 sites. We're going DraftKings, we're going FanDuel, we're going Yahoo. EMAC usually steers the ship and makes the decisions about which site we're going to, but he's not here. So I'm going to let you take the wheel here. Which site we going to first?
All right, let's go to DraftKings. So that's the one I've pulled up on my computer right now. So that'd be the most helpful for us. And you were talking about the UFC before. Those projections are amazing. Yesterday would have gone quite well if Amanda Nunes didn't lose for me, but who expected that to happen? That was like the craziest upset I've ever seen.
I don't know a thing about the fight that you're talking about, but you should have gotten in touch with him and tweet out to her, hey, you're fighting for me tonight. You got to let these fighters know these things.
I should have let her know when she was a minus 1,000 favorite or something like that she needs to win for me. She lost.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah. Second round.
Hey, look, if you're taking the loss on something that's such an outlier like that, that means you're probably doing pretty well on the projections, the tools, all of those things. And to further that point, I actually play MMA from time to time, not knowing a damn thing. I could name probably no active MMA fighters right now. I probably couldn't do it, but I dabble, from time to time. And the only thing I look at is the top fighters tool. I pull that thing up and it's just like, if you're familiar with our boom bust, our top stacks, it's just like those where you've got the top fighter column, you've got the probability of a knockout, the probability of a 100-point fight, a couple other probability metrics. Just go through those, compare them to leverage. It's how this thing works. So DFS is going to be basically the same concept across sports. If you've got tools that are telling you similar kinds of things, making the same types of points for different sports, you can exploit them and you can use them for sports that you don't even necessarily know the rules of. So that's my plug for our MMA tools. A little bit probably for like our NASCAR tools too. Same concept with the top drivers. But hey, let's get into some showdown lineup building here. We'll talk through some of the DK setup. Everybody loves DK. I do a little article on it, breaking down some historical content, looking at a couple different groups. That's up on the site right now. Nick, where do you want to go making the first pick? I've got lineup builder open here, so I'll give you the first pick here on a DraftKings lineup. Where do you want to go with the captain?
All right, so I kind of wanted to go running back, but I'm not too sure if I want to go with Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon, because we've seen over the last couple of weeks that I guess technically Aaron Jones was hurt, but even when Aaron Jones was healthy, that AJ Dillon's usage kept kind of increasing. Now, is he going to be seeing the lion's share of carries with Aaron Jones healthy? No, but with his price compared to the amount of workload he could see, because if you project this game to be a smackdown, I think AJ Dillon will potentially be the optimal captain. Now, I know that may sound a little bit crazy, but I think that is entirely possible. So we're going to go with Davante Adams.
Nice curveball. Solid curveball there. Yeah, Davante. I mean, if we're looking at our top showdown plays tool, which is kind of it's the exact same concept I was just describing for MMA, where we give you the frequency of a guy landing in the optimal lineup in both the captain role and the util role, and we give you their leverage scores, their frequency in those roles compared to their ownership. If we're looking at Davante, his leverage is at negative 1.6, but that's against an optimal lineup rate of almost 20% on the DK slate. That's by far the best option. Your other consideration there, AJ Dillon, was actually the second most frequently optimal. So I would have loved if we had gone that way, because AJ Dillon's got a positive 7 leverage score on him. Not a lot of the field going to the AJ Dillon play in the captain role. You get a nice salary discount, but when we're going to Davante Adams, you pay up, but you're getting by far the breakaway play, right? This is a game where there are 2 stars on one team and they're playing against kind of a lousy squad on the other side. There are 2 clear-cut top-end options on this slate, and they're Davante Adams and the guy that's throwing the ball to him. So I'm totally fine with going to that one, spending a lot of money in the captain spot here. So since you spent all of our money on a flashy captain, bought the luxury car here, I'm going to make you make the second pick as well. I'm going to do the spiteful thing here. Who's our second pick?
All right, so Davante Adams is 17,400 as our captain. So we have 6,520 remaining, and I will stop nodding because the chat's pointing out that I'm nodding too much. Apparently, geez, these guys so mean to me.
I guess I'll stop saying all these things that you have to agree with. And that's
I guess
my
so.
fault, all these good takes. I'm sorry. Sorry, chat.
Yeah, exactly. I blame the chat. Yeah, so Allen Robinson is one of those guys that for some reason I'm interested in, but I'm not going to take him because he just hasn't really done anything this season, but his name is very enticing. So we're going to go with MVS with Randall Cobb out. I think that Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to be the number 2 wide receiver on the team. We have seen some flashes throughout the season, as well as basically every season in the NFL. This guy has been there. You see a couple of games where he flashes. Last week, he had 9 targets, 4 receptions, 50 yards. The week prior, he had 10 targets, 4 receptions, a touchdown, 123 yards. So I think without Randall Cobb here, MVS is in a pretty solid situation. So we'll go with the double receiver stack here on the Packers.
I like that. And I mean, we see when we look back into the historical sample, we see a lot of games that are shaped this way that just kind of slant toward 5-1 or 4-2 constructions for the obvious team, the favored team. And I assume that when you dig in on some of those, and I don't do this part of it, that probably a lot of those come up as tied lineups. I mentioned to you as we were coming onto the show that this sample had 3 of the 4 defense winners that we've seen over the last 90 some odd contests or 100 some odd contests at this point. So there are interesting builds that you can find, but there's definitely a thought toward it's probably good to slant toward the highly favored squad here. So with that in mind, and with the fact that we've got 2 of the correlated pass catchers in the lineup already, it probably makes sense to look toward Aaron Rodgers here and just build him into the lineup. The only problem with that is now that leaves us 2,500 to play with across these last 3 positions. We can get there. There's enough value on the board that we can make that decision. And I mean, if you want to get really creative and wacky about things, you can make that decision, put in another, reasonable, like $2,800 guy from the other team, and then go to like one of these $300 or $500 or $600 guys. But you're getting really, really thin there. So I'm actually going to pull that pick now that I've looked at it, and I'm going to give us a little bit more money to spend across the lineup builder here. So I mentioned AJ Dillon, or you mentioned him. I mentioned that he was coming up frequently, optimal, and positively leveraged in the captain role. If we look at the same tool, he's got the leading leverage score on the board in the flex role. He's at a 20.2 leverage score, coming up in the optimal lineup in a flex spot 43% of the time against 23% ownership. So that's an appealing flex play for only 4,400. We'll put him in there. That leaves us $5,000 to spend. It's going to be a lineup where there's some focus on the Packers passing game, and we're leaving probably the Packers quarterback on the board. So we'll see where we end up here, but it would definitely, this would lead us toward a more unique possibility of a more unique lineup construction if we go this route. So take it away. We've got Adams, Valdez-Scantling, and AJ Dillon in there, 5,000 and change to spend.
Awesome. So I think if we were to have went the other route, now obviously we've already committed to this route, but the guy that I would have went with that was cheap would be Jimmy Graham. For some reason, this guy just magically appears. Our boss, Mr. Alex Baker, he loves Jimmy Graham every single time Jimmy Graham plays on prime time. I see so many tweets about him. He loves him. He scored 2 touchdowns on the last 2 games, so 1 touchdown in each game, but that doesn't matter right now because I don't think we're going to need to fit him into our lineup. So I want to go with the other tight end in this game, and that is Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet has been pretty productive for the Chicago Bears, whether that's been with Andy Dalton or with Justin Fields under center. Now, we did see a bit of decline in production last week up against the Arizona Cardinals, but he was still seeing over 7 targets. And I wouldn't be surprised if, since they're going to be down, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And I think Cole Kmet has a pretty solid chance to score in this game, as long as Jimmy Graham doesn't steal that from him. So I want to go Cole Kmet here.
I think that pick makes a hell of a lot of sense. I like it probably better than at least the wide receivers on that team that we can afford right now. So I think that's probably where we should land. And he's a little bit more expensive than Jimmy Graham. So if you'd gone the Jimmy route, we would have had a little bit more to spend. But I think that makes it, kind of a unique way to approach this specific lineup that we're building. And we do have directions that we can go 5,000 to spend across the rest of the last 2 positions in each spot. So if we were inclined, we could go to basically any of the remaining skill players outside of probably the 2 lead running backs in Aaron Jones and David Montgomery. Those guys are a little bit too pricey. Montgomery on his own would eat all our salary, and Aaron Jones we can't afford. But we could look at, like, if we wanted to go to Robinson, we could look at him at 6,200. That would leave us 3,800 to spend in our last spot here. So we'd be looking at another one of the Bears maybe, or we'd be looking down toward like and I can't get to the kicker and the defense there. So maybe we skip that pick. Let's see. We're challenging ourselves with this one. I like it. See, when Emacs here, we make these too easy. That's what it is.
Yeah, Emac makes it too easy here for us.
Leading us toward all the good picks, probably. So let's take a look. If we go and lean into the Packers a little bit here, and we take the Packers D, since we're only going with the Chicago tight end so far, we can make this kind of a Packers wipeout. We're going with 3 Packers skill players, their defense. That leaves us 4,600 to spend. We could grab their kicker. We could go to, I wish it left us enough for like Allen Lazard and go to the true wipeout. I don't love what this does for our available money, but I don't know necessarily where else I want to go. If I spend 4,000 on Crosby, that leaves us $6,000. Let's do it that way. So that we've got more to talk about here. We'll spend 4,000 on Crosby here. We'll think about it as a Packers wipeout. And I'll pass it back to you with 6,000 to spend. I don't love this lineup that we've built though.
Okay, you don't have to love it to win.
That's very true. That's very true. And we can look at if there are ways to improve it too.
Exactly. So how much do we have left right now?
$6,000. One pick.
$6,000. Awesome. Okay. So we can't get to Allen Robinson, but I'm kind of glad about that, to be honest with you. His name value is very high, but to me, he hasn't done a lot, even though maybe it seems like you might like Allen Robinson a little bit tonight. But let's go ahead and go with, I kind of want to get Jimmy Graham, if I'm being honest with you, the double tight end lineup, which seems a little bit bizarre, though. So we're going to go with Allen Lazard. Less bizarre. Allen Lazard, if this is really a Packers blowout, then Allen Lazard, I think, could be a pretty valuable player here. He saw 6 targets last week, only came down with 2 receptions, 13 yards. But I think without Randall Cobb, this is going to really help out MVS as well as Lazard. So that's the way we're going to go.
I think that makes sense with what we had to spend with the nature of this construction. What I worry about now with this lineup, though, is we do have 3 pass catchers from the Packers in here without their quarterback, including the captain. It gets a little bit challenging for all of these guys to make tournament winning value. Even if Adams catches 3 touchdowns and goes for 100 and change in that captain role, that's not leaving a lot on the shelf for all 3 of these receivers. So just taking a look at it, if we were to make a change, and AJ Dillon gets a lot of his action through the air as well.
Yeah.
If we were to make a change like pulling MVS, maybe that gives us 84 to spend, which gets us Darnell Mooney on the other side.
Yeah, I like that better, if I'm being honest.
Spends all our money. I think maybe that's just, if we think about the nature of our lineup, maybe that one does get duped, but I think it's more likely to be competitive for a top spot just with that kind of a construction. It's still heavy toward the Packers passing game without the quarterback in there, but it takes some of the edge off of it, and it throws another little bone to the Bears side. It spends all our money. So I think I like that approach a little bit better. But this is a good example of just how you can mix and match, especially on a slate like this, where there's just a couple guys at extreme high prices and then everybody at like low to fair prices in the middle. It's difficult to build good lineups, and you're talking about a team on the Bears side that it's just difficult to trust as well. So that's our DK build. Why don't we hop over, since I've got the lineup builder open, we'll hop to FanDuel, and then we'll go over to Yahoo after that. I remind you guys, we're brought to you by PrizePicks today. We'll get into a few PrizePicks picks in a little bit after we talk through some of these lineups. We'll take a look for some questions as well. I'll see if anybody had any DK specific questions while I'm talking through this. Just scrolling through the chat, guys. If you've got questions, drop them in the chat. We'll try and get them. Drop them in the Discord. If you're not a member, I talked up the plans earlier, but one more time, that's an NFL Showdown LBL, all caps, all one word. Get you 25% off the first week of a $29.95 a week platinum plan. I encourage everybody to check it out. Take advantage. Check it out for a week. If you don't like it, I'll let you leave. I promise. Jumping over to the Yahoo board, or to the FanDuel board rather, I'll take the first pick on this one. And I'm going to send us off in a different direction. Let's see what happens when we put David Montgomery in that top spot here. Montgomery, if we're looking at the FanDuel slate, let's see where he lands in terms of some of these leverage scores. If we sort by the leverage, he's at a 1.2 positive leverage score, comes up in the captain spot optimal 8.9% of the time, which is the second highest mark on the entire slate behind Aaron Jones at 17.2% in this latest simulation. So we're getting a lot of Jones optimal in the captain spot, and then we're getting a lot of David Montgomery. So it's running back focused oddly on the FanDuel slate, according to this latest run in terms of the optimal lineup rate. The top scorer percentage, Aaron Jones, big time, 28.5% top scorer. I'm actually wondering if this is accurate, because I'm seeing that the ownership on Devontae Adams. So I'm going to stop talking about some of these metrics while I ping the boss here, because we've got a couple zeros in here that probably shouldn't be in here either. So I'm going to double check this. I'm going to make David Montgomery my top pick, but we're going to ping the boss and double check those numbers real quick. But why don't you go ahead and make our second pick there while I do that?
All righty. So we have David Montgomery in our lineup, $12,000 as the MVP. So we're going to go ahead, and since we did not get Aaron Rodgers last time, let's just get Aaron Rodgers in this lineup. I mean, I think this is going to be he's going to be the best quarterback in this game. I think unless Justin Fields really starts running the ball a lot, I'm not too sure how many lineups I want to get Justin Fields in. So we're going to go with Aaron Rodgers, make it a little bit simple here. But if we wanted to go maybe not that way, I am also interested in getting Darnell Mooney in this lineup as well, because now that you brought up Darnell Mooney, I forgot how much I love Darnell Mooney because the guy has been amazing. Aside from last week, he did have a down game, but the prior 3 weeks, he was really good. So what do you think here? Would you rather go Rodgers or Mooney?
So since we went Bears with that first pick, I would just kind of maybe hop to the other team and go with the Rodgers pick. I'm loading up the correct version. That was probably my fault and not the site's fault. I'm just looking on the board here. I don't know what the hell I loaded in there. Maybe it got updated in between. But coming back around to those points, David Montgomery, not the second leading optimal rate, but it's still a 6.5 in the captain spot on FanDuel. So a respectable optimal score. He's owned 11.1%. So he's a little bit negatively leveraged, but I don't think we really need to sweat it there. Aaron Rodgers comes up the second highest optimal rate, a little bit negatively leveraged, but again, I don't think we need to sweat it all that much in the captain role if we went that way. At the flex spot, he's a 5.2 on the positive side in terms of leverage. So I think we're fine just going with Rodgers in the flex spot. Mooney would be a negative 3.3 in a flex. I'd be more interested in Mooney in a captain role as a skill player. I like to just flip that script a little bit sometimes and get to the positively leveraged plays. Not to say that he'd be a bad play in a flex role by any means. Still coming up optimal 25% of the time, but I like going with Rodgers there in that spot. So we'll do that, and I'll kick it back over to you.
Okay, so I'll pick twice in a row. Well, technically, we both just picked right there.
We went Montgomery and then Rodgers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh wait,
yeah.
no, I'm sorry.
I picked Rodgers.
You picked Rodgers. All right.
Yeah, I was just giving it over to you, seeing what you thought.
You asked me what I thought, and then I was validating. I'm gonna give it back to you anyway because I just spoke through a whole bunch of stuff there. So make the next one as well.
Awesome, sounds good. So here we are gonna go ahead and see. I want to get Jimmy Graham in one of our lineups, but I feel like $7,000 is kind of a high price for him, in my opinion, on here. So we're gonna go ahead and go a different way, and we're gonna go ahead and let's get Mason Crosby into our lineup. I think that this is going to be a game where we see a lot of Mason Crosby. Now, the only issue with Mason Crosby has been the fact that he's not Mason Crosby from, last couple of years. When I was a kid, Mason Crosby was one of the best kickers in the NFL. Now, I don't think anyone would make that argument, but I still think that Mason Crosby is the pick here.
All right. I like that. I like working in, especially like we talked about, just on an oddball kind of a slate like this. You kind of got to work in some of these different differentiated plays. And when everybody is going to be focused on picks like Rodgers, picks like Davante Adams, I think it does make sense to reach a little bit further afield and kind of get to some of these guys. And when you look at the leverage score, I mean, Mason Crosby coming up with a 10.6 leverage score in the flex roll, 24.7% optimal, only owned 18.3% of the time. That's a good pick here. I like that a lot. So I think we lock that one in. And let's see, I will jump back over to the board here. We've got 2 picks to make and 11,250 to spend. We've gone Rodgers, Montgomery, Crosby. We could throw a pass catcher in here. I mean, it's easy enough to get Davante Adams and leave ourselves 8,000. That buys us plenty of different spots here. That would be the chalky way to go here. I think we maybe can tell a story with this specific lineup of maybe it's not Davante Adams day. Maybe we can look to like an Allen Lazard in that second spot. Maybe we can look to our guy, AJ Dillon, or even go with Aaron Jones. I'm going to take Lazard here. That gives you plenty of money to spend. There's 15,000 on the board. You can literally have anyone you want. So take it away.
All right. So we have Allen Lazard. So we're not going to go the way of Davante Adams. And we could technically.
We could go Davante and leave 1,000 on the board here, actually.
Okay. You know what? That seems a little safe, though, but we're going to do that anyways. We're going to go with Davante Adams. I mean, you talked up Davante Adams before. To me, he's the best receiver in the NFL, so I don't think there's too much of an argument to be made against Davante Adams at any point. The only other move I was thinking about making was Justin Fields, but that doesn't make as much sense since we have David Montgomery as our captain, or the MVP, I should say. Sorry. But unless, obviously, we see dump-offs going to David Montgomery.
Yeah, see, and that one I don't mind as much either from just a lineup construction perspective. If we're getting both of those Bears players together with this kind of a lineup build where we're kind of heavy Packers in the middle, and we'd be leaving, if we went to Fields, that would leave $1,500 on the table. So that's a 2 quarterback differentiated lineup with a kicker and 2 premium, 1.5 premium skill players in it, and one of the unexpected and lower owned premium skill players in the MVP spot. I think either way you go, if you had gone Devontae Adams or if you go Justin Fields there with that much money to spend, I think you're pretty good. And I like either pick. And I would have honestly been fine with either running back from the Packers there too. So I think this is on the FanDuel slate. There's just some interesting ways that you can put these lineups together since you don't have that multiplier in the salary spot. As we just demonstrated, you can kind of put together any combination that you want. I'd be hard pressed to put together a combination that spent all of our money without and said like, oh man, I really wanted to have this guy. You can get several of these high priced guys in your lineup. So easy enough to build on this slate. Let's see if anything popped up for FanDuel in the old chat here. Green Bay defense on MVP. Yeah, I wrote CS Ditravine on the DK slate. I think that is viable on this one. We saw, I was telling Nick before the show, we saw 3 of the 4 all-time MVP in our sample, all-time defense wins of MVPs come in games that had a very similar point total of 42.5 or 43.5, and also come in games that had point spreads over 10. So it's not going to be one of your more common results, but it's something that allows you to build unique lineups. It allows you to spend a ton of money. I would focus on building Packers wipeout lineups if you're doing that. Put Green Bay's defense in the captain spot and then build like 5-1 or at worst 4-2 constructions focused on Green Bay. But yeah, I think it is a more viable play this week than it has been most of the season or most other weeks. So these are the types of slates where I would do that. And again, that plays into the idea of if something is focused on only a couple players, making a different decision in one spot can get you very, very different very quickly. So I think that's an important thing to think through on this slate. Good question there. Doesn't look like we've got a ton of other questions. We've got our producer, Mike Awesemo, doing a killer job behind the glass, talking about running out of buffalo wings. He was telling us all about his frantic drive from Pennsylvania to Buffalo today. Glad that he made it to be here with us to produce tonight and bring you this great show. We are going to jump over to the Yahoo board. We'll build a Yahoo board lineup, and then I'll read the PrizePicks plug, and then we'll talk the slate through in terms of some of the different players, and then we'll make some PrizePicks picks. Sound good?
Sounds amazing.
Awesome. Let's pull that up. Guys, while we're doing that, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe. There's probably something I'm supposed to be reading to you at this point. Let's see. We did the Awesemo Platinum. No, I skipped ahead enough, so we can fly through. I'm glad I did it that way. So
Great
let me
job.
jump over. Yeah, I'm just trying to get to Yahoo here. I click on the wrong spot pretty much every time I pull this up because I'm so used to going to the season long still for Yahoo.
Oh yeah, I do the same thing.
Yep. And I like thinking about that when I think about like, are good reasons to play on Yahoo, because there's so many people that are season long players that like, this is just, they have some season long winnings maybe. And it's easy for people to jump into these tournaments if they're just on Yahoo all day, checking out their season long team. So I really like that. I think it's what helps shape the Yahoo slate. And with that said, I finally got it on the right page here. So Nick, take us away. Who's your superstar pick for the Yahoo board here?
Alrighty. Also, speaking of Yahoo, real quick, they give out a lot of free things. Like there's a free NBA contest tomorrow. So go ahead and check that out. I mean, they're not the sponsor of this show, so maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it is what it is. So, all right, we got the superstar here, and I am looking towards who do we pick in the first two? I think we already took Devontae Adams. We already took David Montgomery. So this time we're going to go with a running back, and we're going with AJ Dillon. Because I think that AJ Dillon, again, I talked about this a little bit earlier, not like everyone's here the second we start the show or anything. So when it comes to AJ Dillon, it's the reason why I like AJ Dillon so much is because Aaron Jones's usage is still pretty high. He's still the clear lead running back on the team, but I think the team realizes what they have in AJ Dillon, a big running back who could easily vulture a touchdown in any game. The only worry here would be if Aaron Jones just takes over and has a humongous spot. But otherwise, I think AJ Dillon will be seeing a lot of usage, especially later on in the game. If you paint the picture Bob Ross style that this game is going to be a beatdown, and if it is, then I don't think the team would want to roll out Aaron Jones towards the deep end of the game and they just roll AJ Dillon out there, which we've seen at points in the season. So I like Dillon a lot as the superstar.
I like that pick a lot. We've talked about him a few times, so I'm glad we finally landed on him. Looking at our salary weighted top scoring percentage on Yahoo, he ranks, looks like 6th overall behind the obvious names. Everybody out there could probably guess the 5 guys ahead of him from 2 different teams. So I really like that for $19 in our superstar spot here. And then I'm going to go right back. I'm going to go to Justin Fields here for $24. I think that's a pretty good price comparatively for getting to a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers coming in at $31 definitely is on the board and easy to get to if you want him. But I think that's an interesting enough price on Fields, 11.2% to be the salary weighted top scorer. That's only, it's I mean, it's under half of what Aaron Rodgers is, but everybody's going to be going to Aaron Rodgers in
Yeah.
that spot. So I think we're buying differentiation with that pick. So I'm going that way, and I'll kick it back over to you for one of the first of our last three picks here. We've got $25 per player to spend over three.
Okay, so since we have Justin Fields, I want to go with his number one receiver. Used to be Allen Robinson. Now that is clearly Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney has been over 85% of the snaps in the last three games. In that fourth game there, it was 81%. Last week, he had 7 targets, 5 receptions, 27 yards only up against the Arizona Cardinals. But the week prior, he played a lot better up against the Lions. I think he's the clear number one guy there, even with Allen Robinson healthy. I think if you want to get that correlation between the fact that we picked Justin Fields already, I want to go with Darnell Mooney, unless we went with Cole Kmet, but I like Darnell Mooney a little bit better.
So I like that pick. I like the reasoning behind it, and yeah, thinking of him in terms of being the top producing wide receiver there now. And I'm just looking at I'm clicking on a few different spots here. I wanted to see if we had gone to Allen Robinson for cheaper at $13 instead of the Mooney pick at 18.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to see if that would buy us both of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, and it doesn't. It falls short of that. So I'm good with going with the Mooney pick here. I always like to explore things like that. If I made this decision instead, what is that buying me on the higher end? So if we go to Mooney here, that leaves us 29 apiece across 2 spots. It's easy to just grab Aaron Rodgers there for 31, and then you've got $28. You could go Aaron Jones. You could go to basically anybody. Well, not basically. You can go to exactly anybody but Devontae Adams if we do that. So I think Aaron Jones would make sense, but there's a lot of different plays that we can go with here. I'm going to just take Aaron Rodgers. We're going to go to the 2 quarterback build. I think we're differentiated enough with Dylan in the superstar spot, with getting the Fields and Mooney combo in here. It might be a lineup that gets duped a few times, but it's not going to be one of your more popular constructions. So take it away. $28 to spend, 1 spot left. You can have anybody but Devontae Adams.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on going with both running backs on the same team? Because if you're kind of more negative on that, then I think David Montgomery would be a pretty easy pick here if you didn't want to go the way of Aaron Jones.
Under normal circumstances, like on a main slate, I don't even like getting 2 running backs from the same game, let alone the same team. In a showdown format, especially one that's going to be slanted like this, where we're expecting the Lions' share of the offense or the Packers' share of the offense to be coming from the Packers, I have no issues going with the double running back configuration here. I think there's enough meat on the bone for both of these guys to eat tonight. They could both easily score the only 2 touchdowns of the night. There's all different ways these guys could get that done. I have no issues going with either him or with David Montgomery, to be honest.
Okay, so let's go ahead and go with Aaron Jones then, because then we could kind of, paint the picture of the tale that just Darnell Mooney's getting all the points for the Bears. So let's go ahead and do this with Aaron Jones. And I think Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are both good pass catching running backs. So it's not necessarily that you're losing a lot of correlation by playing Aaron Rodgers with them.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where you can see either one of those running backs get into the end zone on a passing play. You can also see a situation where if the Packers are up by a couple of touchdowns, they're not necessarily going to be slinging the ball all around the field and throwing the ball to Devontae Adams 15 times. You might just see a bunch of handoffs and a bunch of dump outs to these running backs, and just they're going to gain ground through attrition. So I think that's definitely a viable lineup. And I think, like I was saying, I think it's a unique enough build. Maybe you run into a couple dupes, but I don't think this is one. If it landed in the top spot, I don't think you'd be splitting this prize pool 500 different ways or anything. So I like that one. I'm actually going to drop that one in, since I'm one of those people who's sitting here with a few Yahoo dollars from my season long winnings in here. Why not? I click that one in there. We'll see how it does. So we've taken through 3 different lineup builds, guys. If you've got questions out there, we're happy to answer them. Drop them into the chat. Drop them into the premium Discord. Helps keep us rolling through the back end half of the show here. EMAC in the chat. EMAC working hard for the likes, asking everybody to hit the likes. He just dropped 10 $1 head-to-heads in the DK lobby. That is free money, people. Go get it. Go get our pal EMAC. He's feeling a little under the weather, but still grinding it out. He probably played 10 times the amount of slates I did today, even though he's sick. So let's get in. We'll talk through some of the players, and the team by team. Just talk the football matchup of it all. And I'm going to throw a little bit of that your way. So just starting in on the quarterbacks, I think it's pretty obvious which one of these quarterbacks we would favor. Gun to our heads in a vacuum to win us a football game or to score us a whole bunch of fantasy points. But talk to me about the pluses that Justin Fields brings to the table as a quarterback, and the things that he can do on the football field that might lead to fantasy points here.
Yeah, well, the biggest difference between Justin Fields and Aaron Rodgers is that Justin Fields is way more likely to try to run the ball, which is very good in terms of fantasy football. He's actually sixth in terms of carries and fourth in terms of rushing yards at the quarterback position. And Justin Fields obviously hasn't played in every game. We've seen him miss the last couple of weeks, didn't play at the beginning of the season. So that's one way to point towards Justin Fields. And his best games are typically when he is running the ball a lot. Week 8 up against the 49ers, he rushed in, I think that was a primetime game, for over 100 yards. So that is something to point to. Obviously, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, this guy is, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the NFL. At least I think so. Maybe you want to argue for Pat Mahomes or something like that. But Aaron Rodgers has been amazing as of recently. Over the last, since week number 5, he has only thrown 1 interception. So that's pretty good, you would think, right? And then week 11 up against the Minnesota Vikings, he threw 4 touchdowns. So there's obviously a lot of reasons to like Aaron Rodgers. Not really something I don't think we have to dive super deep into. I think everyone really likes Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I don't think we're changing any minds in either direction on Aaron Rodgers here, even if we came out with a hot take about not liking him. Yeah, I mean, you guys just dynamite doing all this with a bad case of COVID toe and all of that nonsense that went on. But a 1.1% interception rate on the season, 23 TDs, four interceptions, 7.7 yards per pass attempt. There's nothing not to like here. Fields on the other side of it, 4% interception rate, 8 interceptions on the season in just 8 starts, 6.9 yards per pass attempt. But you mentioned his ability on the ground, his athleticism, and the idea that, hey, he's going to throw a few touchdowns in his career. We could grab 2 of them tonight. If we get 2 touchdown passes, you're probably going to want to have Justin Fields in your lineup. So I think that's pretty much the argument for Fields here. And it kind of rolls into some of the pass catching options. So we talked through a lot of these guys as we were building those lineups, but anything you really want to focus on, you seem to really like Darnell Mooney. You want to talk him through a little bit in terms of what he's done on the field for us through the season?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about Darnell Mooney. Now, he has been one of the most interesting plays this season because last year he did show a little bit of flash, but the problem was that Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles just couldn't throw him the ball. So he was kind of stuck like as one of those receivers that's always open, but just can't get the ball thrown to him. This year, obviously, things have been a lot better, even if the quarterback play of Andy Dalton and Justin Fields hasn't been the best. But he is 16th in the NFL in terms of snap share with an 86.9%, which just leads me to really believe that he is the number 1 receiver on this team. He has a 26.3% target share in this offense, 10.8% in the red zone. He's targeted very heavily, 27.4%, and he only has 4 touchdowns on the season. But that's not something that really scares me here because I think he's still going to have a great day. And then someone we haven't talked about, I do not have his stats pulled up, but it would be on the other side of the ball. And people did bring it up in the chat earlier. I believe his name is Josiah DeGuara, the Green Bay Packers tight end, who actually had a good game 2 weeks ago, having 2 receptions, 2 targets, 37 yards, and a touchdown. Is he someone that you are interested in at all? Josiah DeGuara is how you say his name.
I was aware that he was on the board. You just said more than I knew about him off the top of my head. I can pull up, let me just jump over to the DraftKings board and see what we've got him on. Good old Josiah here. I was aware that he was on the board because I included him in the groups when I was building him for my article, but it was more of just a click. Looking at some of his ratings, we're talking about a guy 1.6% optimal in the captain spot. A little bit more relevant if you go to him in the util, 13.8% of the time comes up in the optimal, a 6.8% probability of being in the top 2 to 6 scorers. Gives you a little bit of positive leverage, but it's not like it's a secret. Like he's 13.8% optimal, 12% owned. So you're not really getting way beyond the field. It's a matter of what you're buying for that discount. You get him for $2,600 on DK. So if that's the difference between, say, Allen Robinson or like Cole Kmet and getting to like Darnell Mooney, something like that, then sure, I think it becomes viable in that kind of a situation. So it's all about what you're gaining by making that play, I think, to me. But for value, yeah, he'd be on the board at least in the util spot for or the flex spot for DK builds.
Yeah, EMAC dropped in the chat. Since Robert Tonyan was lost for the season with a torn ACL, DeGuara has led the position with 11 targets in the subsequent 4 games. So he is the number 1 tight end there. 11 targets, though, in 4 games. That's not something that gets me super excited. But yeah, he is definitely the lead tight end on the team. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back, Devontae Adams had 14 targets in week 9, 11 targets in week 10. I mean, this is the guy that's getting the majority of the targets in this offense. And then you look at MVS 2 weeks before the bye, 10 targets and 9 targets, actually out-targeted Devontae Adams. So between those two guys, that's where the primary focus of this passing game is going to be. But yeah, if you're considering ancillary options, that's one that, hey, maybe the crowd is sleeping on it a little bit. 4 targets in week 12. 2 the week before that, 3 the week before that. So, I mean, it's not a ton of volume, but if one of those happens to be in the red zone, happens to get into the end zone, that could be slate winning. So, definitely a consideration for some shares. I wouldn't go completely haywire with it in the flex spot. The Mooney versus Robinson one is kind of interesting too. If you look back to when Robinson was active, he missed 3 weeks. They had the bye week, but before that, week 9 saw the same amount of targets, 6 as Mooney. The weeks before that, Mooney saw 9, Robinson 4, 5-4 in Mooney's favor, 8-7 in Mooney's favor, 5-5, 7-3. So Mooney's been getting more targets even when Robinson's been out there. I wouldn't expect that to change here. So I agree with you. I think he's the primary guy, but maybe there is a little bit of room in some of our lineups for Allen Robinson. Still a talented guy, a guy we know can haul in some touchdowns, a guy who's a big target on the field. So there's definitely reason to stick him into some lineups. But yeah, if we're talking about which one of these guys rates out better, it's definitely Mooney. And we'll talk about some of the specifics, make some picks against the spread and against some of these player props. But I want to talk real quick before we do that about PrizePicks specifically. They've got daily prop-based contests. There's no sharks over there. There's no optimizers. There's no mass entries. You're booking a 5-pick card. And if you get all 5 of them right, that can win you 10 times your entry fee. You're not competing against Alex. You're not competing against Adam Ship My Money. You're not competing against Steve Buzzard. You're not competing against these guys. You only are picking props. And we give you the tools to do it right. If you go to the site, we've got our props tools page. We've got one for NBA. We've got one for NFL. Pull that up. It'll show you the line. It'll show you Alex's projection. It'll show you next to that the win rate for either the over or the under. So it'll say this is 75% likely to hit the over, hit the under. You can take that to the bank. That's based on Alex's projections on our simulations. That's how frequently that thing's going to come in. So just go to the top picks, whether it's the over or the under, book those 5, the top 5 into your card and run with it. You can win up to 10 times your entry fee. We're also providing a promo code for this site. The promo code's easier than the other one. It's just Awesemo, all caps, all one word, AWESEMO, Awesemo. That gets you $100 match on your first deposit. We're also sticking a promo on top of that. If you go over to PrizePicks now, you sign up. There's a link probably in the bottom here. If you go to the homepage, there's definitely a link with all the terms and the rules and everything on our site. Make sure you use the same email you're using to sign up at Awesemo, but you can get a free month of platinum if you go over to PrizePicks right now, sign up over there and make a real money deposit. We've got a great partnership with those guys. We're excited about it, and we're signing a lot of people up for free platinum months. So don't miss out. It comes to you by email 24 to 48 hours after the fulfillment. It does not get set up automatically. A lot of people asking, hey, it hasn't appeared yet. You're going to need to do something. We're going to send your promo code and you're going to have to set it up on your end, but we're going to get that taken care of for you within 48 hours of fulfillment. If you don't get that, email us at support@awesemo.com. We'll be happy to set you up. Nick, we've got some running backs on the board. We've talked through some of them already, but let's take a quick tour through. We'll take a more serious look maybe at David Montgomery, who we kind of glossed over in all of this. We talked, I feel, a little bit more about the Packers running backs. Talk to me about David Montgomery, one of the more reliable producers on this Bears team, if we had to say anybody on this team's reliable.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. David Montgomery has been pretty reliable. Last week, especially, he just dominated up against the Arizona Cardinals in that matchup. He ran 20 routes. He had 9 targets, 8 receptions, 141 total yards. He had 21 carries in that game and a touchdown. The guy just dominated up against the Arizona Cardinals. Even though they ultimately lost that game, he played quite well. And I think he is really the one bright spot besides Darnell Mooney in this offense. Now, you can talk yourself into Cole Kmet being some type of a superstar potentially, maybe when Jimmy Graham eventually decides to retire. But at the end of the day, I agree with you that David Montgomery is kind of this bright spot in this offense. And he wasn't even in that many snaps last week compared to normal. He was only in at 75% of the snaps and was still able to do that. The weeks prior, 84.3%, 93%, 84.5%. So I think as long as he's in there 75, 80% of the time up against the Packers, that he'll be able to get it done. But I do like Aaron Jones more, definitely, like in a vacuum over David Montgomery.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And when you talk about Jones and look at the numbers, we've got to remember Jones 564 yards on the season, sharing that role with AJ Dillon, who's got 543 yards on the season, 2 TDs to Jones's 3. All 3 of these guys averaging 4.2 yards per rushing attempt. So there's a lot of equality there. But yeah, it just kind of makes sense to go with the guy who's not really sharing that role all that much. So I like the David Montgomery spot. And if we're talking in terms of attempts per game, 16.75 for Montgomery, 12.09 for Aaron Jones. We could probably just round that to 12, 10.5 for AJ Dillon. So he's by far leading in rushing attempts per game. He's leading in yards per game. It's just a matter of if this guy's going to get into the end zone here. I think he's a pretty good play in terms of, what we can expect from some kind of point production from the Chicago side. Outside of anything in terms of Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon that you might want to bring up, is there anything we've kind of glossed over? You want to talk anything about the defenses or the kickers? If you got any random stats about those guys, or anything else you want to bring up about the shape of the game here?
Yeah, we can look at that. But something I wanted to bring up, the chat was talking about how there was going to be like 50-mile-an-hour winds or something, which made me very nervous for a second. I was like, oh no, have we just been talking about this whole game and they're just going to run the whole time or something? Turns out that's not true at all. So shout out to the chat for making me a little bit nervous. But yeah, the wind's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. It's not going to be like the Patriots versus the Bills. And I'm sad that we didn't have a show that night, because I know EMAC would have some type of reference from the 1970s about a game that happened just like this, that EMAC remembers. All right.
For sure. And you probably don't remember the Fog Bowl, but I was a little kid. Well, maybe I don't remember what year it was, but I remember being pretty little and seeing that game on TV, and it was just like a flat white screen, like could not see what's going on. I don't think that's the kind of situation we're going to have for this one. I just pulled up Dark Sky, which is my go-to site for weather. It looks like a 15, not 50-mile-an-hour wind. This is the Windy City. Oh no, wait, they're in Green Bay, so this is not the Windy City, but it is the frozen tundra. I don't think we really have to concern ourselves with weather all that much. Temperature appears to be in the 30s, 56% humidity, not really sweating it. Most of that stuff, guys, gets baked into the Vegas lines anyway, gets baked into the projections. That's why with that ridiculous weather Bills game we saw the other day, it was such a low game total, because they just weren't expecting a lot of scoring. So you can typically rely on Vegas to have that nailed down pretty much. I don't like to make extreme changes for weather. So I'm glad we cleaned that one up. Good catching, looking at the chat there. So let's move on. Let's jump over to the PrizePicks board and talk some of these guys here. I'll get myself logged into the site. Anything else that you wanted to call out real quick while I'm just jumping over here and getting that set up?
Yeah. So when it comes to Aaron Jones, again, I think we did kind of touch upon this a little bit, but I think a lot of people are severely underrating his pass catching ability, his 48 targets on the season. Again, this is in just 11 games. He hasn't played in every game of the season, which is 9th at the running back position, 10th at the running back position in terms of receptions, only 4 drops on the season. And he has a grand total of 298 receiving yards. Again, AJ Dillon is also pretty solid in terms of the target category. When he is targeted, he does a good job with it, but I don't think we're going to see him get like 7-8 targets in this game. I think it is possible, though, that Aaron Jones does see that.
That's a good call. Just taking a look at some of the per target numbers. Aaron Jones, 6.21 yards per target. Dillon, 9 yards per target. Both of them, no ADOT to speak of. They're both catching the ball at or behind the line of scrimmage and doing interesting things with it. But yeah, I think that could definitely make some sense. And we've seen Jones do some damage through the air. So 48 targets on the year, 37 catches versus Dillon's 29. Dillon's caught 27 of 29 balls. That's pretty damn good.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Catch rate. Yeah, that's impressive. So yeah, there's something to be said for those guys. 9 yards after the catch per reception for Jones, 9.7 for Dillon. They're producing at similar levels across the board. So I think you can consider them that way. And you're just talking about volume after a certain point, and you slant it 60-40 in Jones's favor, and you're good to go.
Yeah,
so
something.
Go ahead.
I was going to say something real quick. I saw in chat a little bit earlier. They were asking about Jakeem Grant. Now, my opinion as a Dolphins fan, I can't stand Jakeem Grant. Like, this guy just makes every play that, like, he would just drop every important ball. But he did actually play really good last week up against the Arizona Cardinals. But to me, in that game, he had 7 targets, 5 receptions, 62 yards, and a touchdown. To me, that's more of a flash in the pan game. I think you are being a little ambitious if you play way over the field on Jakeem Grant. What is your thoughts on that?
Look, if you want to take a few dart throws, if it makes something else work in particular in your lineup and you are a believer in that situation, then sure. Is it one of your more likely plays to come through? You can go to the top showdown plays board and see that it pretty clearly is not. Jakeem Grant, 1.2% chance of being a top 2 to top 6 scorer. That's really all we need to know about the play. It's an extreme dart throw. Could he catch a ball and get into the end zone with it and become relevant? Absolutely. At 2,800 in a flex spot. If that's buying you something interesting in the other spots, go for it, but don't go crazy with it. Under 5-ish%. Let's not put him in half of all lineups. But yeah, I think it's at least somewhat viable. Jumping over to the prize picks board, we've got some interesting stuff here. One just off the top, it's a big number, 240 and a half passing yards for Aaron Rodgers. Where are you on that one? Because we're talking about a game where we expect them to kind of light this team up, but we said it before when we were talking about the running backs. Maybe that doesn't necessarily lead to a big time passing game. Maybe they just shut it down and go to the run game in the second half. Where are you on Aaron Rodgers passing yards?
Yeah, so you said it was 240 and a half. Looking at his last couple of games, in all of his last 3 games, he has eclipsed that number, having over 300 yards twice, and 292 was the other time. But like you are saying, I think we are pretty high on the running backs here, but I still think he could get that number. So that's would be my lean on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go that way too. And like I was saying during the promo read, what I love to do with this site is just pull up our betting tool. It's awesemo.com/NFL/player-props.
Yeah.
And it is so easy. You can look, and sometimes the lines are different because we're changing the lines and the prize picks lines don't update or don't do it as quickly. So I'm looking at a board here. Aaron Rodgers at a 253 and a half. Alex has him projected for 260.78, call it 260.8, coming in 55% of the time against a significantly higher line here. I love that. I think that would vault probably, if we were doing the math on this one, to what, 65, 70 plus probably. I would imagine over 70% when we go to this one for the over. So that's one I think is a clear cut, easy one to plug into the prize picks board here. And then I also think the other quarterback line is interesting with Justin Fields, 167 and a half on this line. I'll pull Fields up on the old board here, not Mayfield, but Justin Fields. There he is. On our board, it was at 179 and a half. And Alex had it going over 50, Alex had it going over 60% of the time. Alex has him projected at 197 and a half. So when we're talking about a line of 167, that's another one that just becomes pretty stark that it's going to be a pretty good pick here for this board. Probably call it 65-ish% again.
Yeah.
What do you think of Justin Fields getting to the 167 and a half?
Yeah, I love that number. I think that his numbers just literally point directly towards that. Besides his game where he got hurt up against Baltimore, the last 4 games, he's went over that number easily. And I think if they are crawling from behind in this game, like we basically project in basically all of our lineups here, I think that we will see Justin Fields easily smash over that. I think that 179 is a much better line than what Prize Picks has given us. It would make me a little bit more nervous if that was the line.
Yeah, that one would be definitely a little bit tighter, a lot to sweat there. So if we like that over for the quarterback, I think sometimes it does make sense. We've talked about this on previous shows to kind of follow a narrative with your card here. So if we're liking the quarterback to go over his prop, you mentioned this guy a few times during the show. I know that he's your number one receiver on the Bears outside of the tight end and your irrational love for tight ends. I don't know if I love anything in life as much as you love tight ends for DFS, but Darnell Mooney sitting on the board at a 40 and a half receiving yard line. What do you think of that one, pairing it with the quarterback pick?
Yeah, like you said, we talked about this basically every single time we talk about prize picks. That correlation is pretty important in making these cards. So I think that Darnell Mooney here, Awesemo hasn't projected at, Alex hasn't projected at 53.51. So I would definitely go over, especially if you think Justin Fields could hit that over number. Because again, I really do think Darnell Mooney is the clear number one guy. All the stats you read off earlier point towards that over Allen Robinson.
Yeah, for sure. Clearing it by more than 13 in the projections that we've got for him is pretty solid. And we're talking about a guy who is averaging 8.01 yards per target. He's had 90 targets on the season. We saw him get if I jump back over to this board, we saw him get 16 targets in week 11, 8 targets, 7 targets in the last 2 weeks. We are throwing Allen Robinson onto the field next to him, but at 8 yards and change per target, what does he need? 5 catches, and we're there. And that's, being conservative about it, I think. So I think that one definitely makes sense when we're clearing it by 13 in the projection. It was at a 57% versus a 44.5 line. So with a 40.5 line, I think we're up into the 60s once again. So I think that's an easy one to take there. Let's see. Let's go over to the touchdown board. Looks like one guy from this game on the touchdown board. How do you like Aaron Jones to score a touchdown? It's at a 0.5. So we're talking about, does Aaron Jones score a touchdown? Yes or no?
I would lean with the yes. I mean, when they are in the red zone, they do like to give the ball to Aaron Jones a ton. Aaron Jones has, I believe, how many touchdowns? He has 7 total touchdowns on the season. He's pretty involved in the red zone. He has 3.55 red zone touches per game, ranking 6th at the running back position. So I would go ahead and lean towards yes, he will score a touchdown today.
I'm with you on that one. That's where I would have landed as well. We don't have a specific touchdown one for rushing touchdowns on the board on Awesemo. So we're going to just go with our gut on that one and say that one's probably a pretty good one. Let's look over. We'll jump over to the passing TDs because we do have that one. Do we have a receiving TDs? No, I'm going to change my mind on that. Let's go with just pure receptions.
Okay.
Let's look at some of these guys. Your guy, Cole Kmet. 3 receptions for Cole Kmet. What do you think?
Cole Kmet. Well, Awesemo projects him at 3.44. So that would make me think that that's a yes. And I also think that even if I wasn't looking at those numbers, that would be a yes for me as well. 3 receptions last week, 8 receptions the week prior to that, 1 the week before that. But, that was kind of a down game. He's been getting a lot more receptions as of recently. I think it doesn't really matter for him at all if it's Andy Dalton or Justin Fields. Obviously, it is Justin Fields in this game. But I think if you were to stick Andy Dalton in this game, I would be just as confident in Cole Kmet. So that's kind of my lean on this. I would definitely go over.
Like it a lot. And looking at the board on the site, like you said, 3.44, it was a 63% over against the 2.5 line. So give it a little bit of a downgrade from that, call it like a 58% or so. Maybe it's one of the back end picks on a card here, but I think it's definitely viable. And it also plays with the Fields play. If we're talking about building a card that makes sense for the quarterback going over, even though that was kind of a low one, I think it does make sense to still consider it here. Let's jump back over. We'll look at receiving yards here. Let's find AJ Dillon. AJ Dillon, 11.5 receiving yards. That sounds like an opportunity to me. What do you think of that?
Yeah, 11.5 receiving yards does sound pretty good to me. But I mean, I feel like we're falling into this chalk maneuver where we've hit all over on everything and it's going to come bite us in the ass.
Well, we're fortunate. We don't have to worry too much about the the popularity of the picks. We're just looking for winning picks on this site, so we're not, if Alex builds the same card as this, we're both getting paid. So that works. AJ Dillon the last 2 weeks, 5 targets and 6 targets before the bye there. And we're talking about a guy who, jumping back to the board, is a 9 yards per target guy.
Yeah.
We're talking about a guy who's caught 27 of his 29 targets on the season. That seems like easy math to me to get over 11 and change. So I really like that one. I think that's a kind of a smash spot. Let's see if it's on our board here. Alex has it. No, that's the receptions board. I'm not on the receiving yards board. I'm going to just guess that we're good here.
I got it. It's 13.5. And Alex has it under 12.79. Really? But what is the number on the
so it's 11. It's 11.5 on PrizePicks. So we're jumping back to the other side on that. That's interesting that we've got it that low, though. I'm a little bit surprised. I'm thinking maybe we're shaving just targets for passing game volume. Maybe we're expecting a little bit more. What I don't have in front of me is our game script adjusted passing percentage, rushing percentage numbers. I would imagine that would be the only case for that. Maybe the boss is just expecting more like 3 targets for him. That said, with 3 targets at the rate at which he catches these things and what he turns in on yards per target, I still think he gets there more often than not if he sees a handful of targets here. So I still like that one, but yeah, it was trending towards maybe more of an efficient line than we expected. That's what's interesting. And that's what's revelatory, guys, about, again, I'm beating it to death, but using the tools the right way and pulling them up before you book these picks is the right way to do this. And it can really open your eyes about the quality of some of these picks. So maybe that's one that we're thinking of it in some terms, but the model sees it differently and the math sees it differently. So it can be really interesting exploring it for that. Anything jumping out to you as kind of an inefficient line if you're looking through PrizePicks?
Nothing much right now, but what I was going to add to what you were saying was that the tools showed me today to actually play Saquon Barkley, which is something I never want to do. So shout out to the tools because they actually worked. Saquon Barkley actually did something today, which I assume you even found as a shock as a Giants fan.
I did. I find it as a shock when my Giants do much of anything these days. Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm glad to see Saquon back on the field. I'll leave it at that. I'm just so disheartened by fire Dave Gettleman. That's how I'll end that. That's really just all I
Yeah.
want for Christmas. Let's look for our great sponsor here, Prize Picks, with like 5-6 minutes left in the show. We'll take a look around the boards. Looks like some of the receiving TD. I think Devontae Adams, similar situation with receiving touchdowns. Devontae Adams, yes or no on a touchdown?
I would probably lean towards yes, if I'm being honest with you. If we project him to be this good this week, then I would assume that he does find the end zone. And has nothing to do with this game, but tomorrow, I love Cooper Kupp to score a touchdown.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, I noticed that was up there as well. And that's another, I mean, that's the cool thing about these sites. You know, you can go cross slates, you can go to a couple different interesting combinations with these things. So it's a really, really slick site, you guys. You can use cross sport entries. So if you've got something that you like from basketball, you've got 2 picks from basketball you like, and there happens to be a Monday night football game going on, that'll be a situation tomorrow night. There's also hockey going on tomorrow. You can make picks from all those different sports and combine them on the same card. So just another cool way to play it at Prize Picks. We've got the promo code going. It'll get you up to $100 match deposit bonus. The promo code is easy. It's just Awesemo, all one word, AWESEMO. You can get Prize Picks on the App Store, on Google Play, or just go to the website, prizepicks.com. Pretty easy to spell that one and find these guys. And again, guys, we're doing a promo for a free month of platinum. If you're a new member at Prize Picks, if you haven't used these guys before, jump over there right now. Follow the links that we've got on the site, jump in there, use the promo code to get your deposit match, and get yourself a free month. If you make a deposit with a real money deposit on Prize Picks, you get a free month of Awesemo Plus. You'll get an email from us 24 to 48 hours after that. If you don't get that fulfillment email, email us at support@awesemo.com. We'll be happy to get you set up. Let's look around for some questions here. Adams versus Mooney. Who's your favorite? Just in a total vacuum, no site given. Adams versus Mooney.
Adams versus Mooney. Well, obviously, if there was no money correlated to this, right? If there's no price, then I would say Adams. But I think given the fact that Mooney will definitely be lower owned, I would probably lean towards Mooney.
Yeah, I think Mooney lower owned, lower cost, lets you do a little bit more interesting stuff with your lineup. But we know that Devontae Adams is, if not the best receiver in the league, in top 3, arguably. So I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer to me. But both talented guys; those are the number ones on either side. Suggested favorite at captain for DK. Who's your favorite captain, or let's say who are your top 2 captains on the DK slate? Who would you be looking at the most?
AJ Dillon, definitely. I have him in a couple of my lineups. And then I would probably say Devontae Adams, because I think that Devontae Adams is just a super safe call that really does have the upside to just dominate in a game like this up against the Bears, where we all project the Bears to get a little bit destroyed in this one.
Yeah. And for the guys in the chat, it is really hard to not sit here and nod your head when the other guy's saying something that you agree with and something sharp. We're in a visual medium. I don't want to cut the other guy off, so I'm nodding just as much as anybody here. So I don't know. If you don't like nodding, this isn't the right spot for you. But yeah, I'm with you on the on those 2 picks. I think you're talking about the guy who's most frequently optimal by a ridiculous margin. He's very, very owned, but he's well worth it in Devontae Adams in that captain spot. And then the other guy, second highest optimal rate, highest leverage score available outside of Mason Crosby. So if you wanted to go with a kicker, you'd be a little bit more positively leveraged. But AJ Dillon sitting at a 7 leverage mark in the captain spot, 12.4% optimal, only 5.4% owned in that role. 4,400. We talked about the shared volume. We talked about him getting all that attention in both the rushing game and the passing game. There's a lot to like about that play. So if you're going with a lot of Aaron Jones in the captain spot, I would say, hey, maybe we shave off 40% of those and start going to AJ Dillon lineups and split that baby a little bit differently there, because you're gaining a lot by doing that. So those are my favorite plays as well. I would have answered that the same way. And what you want to focus on is, put the quarterbacks in the flex roles and then just try and get different with some of the skill players and the combinations. Slate like this, don't be afraid to leave a lot of money on the table. And don't be afraid to make some differentiated picks. This is probably going to be a weird one. So somewhere
Yes.
in there, there's going to be a strange differentiated one, or it's just going to be that chalky build that 700 people are going to win because it's Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers up top, and there's nothing we can do. So you're kind of rolling with that. If you want to split 500 different ways, you build that lineup. If you want a shot at actually winning the damn thing, you've got to make some differentiated picks. How popular will a Dillons and Jones stack be? Do you expect to see that a lot? Do you expect, like, how frequently would you think you're duped if you got both Dillon and Jones in your lineup?
I don't think that is going to be very frequently owned, if I'm being honest with you, but I like it a lot in my lineup. So maybe maybe I'm thinking that maybe not a lot of people like it, and that's why I like it so much. Maybe that's why, I don't know. But I don't think that that'll be something that's a very high owned stack.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we talked about that a little bit. We actually built one of those lineups earlier in the show. So Masachiro, oh boy, that's what did I have to? Mr. Double M guy who asked that question there. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that name that quickly. But if you rewind the show a little bit, you'll catch we built one of those lineups out. So there's a good lineup build in there. Let's see, we can go through some of these other ones. People speculating on our mental health. That's nice. Always good to see. Love the amateur psychologists. Not a whole lot going on in chat. Who's our captain? Yeah, Awesemo answered that one right. We play many captains. We're talking about building a lot of lineups. Let's talk about the distributions in captains. And guys, we're brought to you again by PrizePicks, our great sponsor. We went through a ton of picks for PrizePicks already, and I think we took most of the good ones off the board. So we're rounding out the show talking about a few different things here, but make sure you check those guys out. If we're talking about 150 lineups, Nick, how many of them outside of Devontae Adams or AJ Dillon on DraftKings, how many of them have another captain in them? Are you going like 75 lineups for those two guys and then 75 lineups with other captains, or do you cut it even fatter than that and give those guys like 100 and reserve 50 for other captains? Is it just all in on those two captains? What are you doing there?
Yeah, I'd probably go closer to 100 with those two, and then probably some type of combination of Aaron Rodgers at captain as well as Darnell Mooney, and then I'd sprinkle a little bit of Cole Kmet because I do like Cole Kmet a lot.
I like that. I would probably throw a couple Allen Robinson shares in there, just in terms of the big playability that he's got, and the fact 6.9% optimal, 3.2 leverage score, only 3.7% of the field on him in the captain role there. So I like getting to some of him, and we've got some just really dynamite leverage spots on the board in the flex role. So again, it's a matter of getting creative, work in the kickers, work in the defense where you can. And some of these secondary and even tertiary receivers, it's a good night to get ugly with these builds, with this kind of a lineup construction. Nick, anything to take us out of here? I think we just hit the game start kickoff time. Anything to take us out of here? You did a killer job, man.
Thank you. It was a nice time having a two-man booth. Clearly, we don't need EMAC. I think we just kick him off now. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who came out and watched today. We have 400 people watching right now. So make sure as you're leaving to just like the stream. I mean, it literally costs you nothing, helps us out a ton, helps us get closer to 69,000 subscribers. Very nice, as Borat would say. So thank you guys all for coming out today. Love all you guys. You got anything else to say, Terry?
No, I'm just here nodding. So I'm going to say what he said, and I'm going to
keep nodding.
Just keep thank nodding. You guys very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Take us out, Mike.
A nice Christmas beat here.
Hit that like button, everybody.